you. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Before we start, I'd like to turn the mic over to Martin, our stroll coordinator, who has a special statement to share with us tonight, as he does every Thursday night. Martin, take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, Aria. Good evening, Michelle. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Our sponsor this evening is the award-winning Manhattan Times, Northern Manhattan's only bilingual newspaper. And for 2 decades, the Manhattan Times, co-founder of the Uptown Arts Stroll, is the go-to Uptown news source. In print, online, and on social media, the Manhattan Times keeps Uptown informed. Manhattan Times proudly supports NoMAA, the Uptown Arts Stroll, and through 17 prior strolls, they have published the Uptown Arts Stroll guide in the newspaper to help us notify all of you, Northern Manhattan residents, of the artists, exhibitions, events, and open studios during the Uptown Arts Stroll since 2003. And tonight we are very grateful to and thank the Manhattan Times for sponsoring Stay Home Open Studios. Aria?
So much, Martin. And thanks again to the Manhattan Times for your support and for your deep connection to Uptown and for serving as our eyes and ears for so many years. So thanks to them. And good evening to all of you. And thank you all for being here tonight for our 13th virtual open studio. As Michelle mentioned, my name is Neria Leyva Gutierrez, and I am Acting Executive Director of the Northern Manhattan's Arts Alliance. Before I introduce tonight's artists, I wanted to thank the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council, who are supporting us tonight in part. Thank you. We are grateful. And of course, the gratitude extends to all of you tonight and to our wonderfully creative community of artists who have impressed and inspired us weekly. These opportunities to connect weekly feel like everything. And so I'm so happy that we've been able to do this weekly. And I'm so happy, additionally, to introduce tonight's artists, Laurence Groux, who many of you know as Elle, and to share a bit of her fascinating story before she introduces her work. Elle was born and raised in a small village in Switzerland where art did not figure prominently into the landscape. In fact, she remembers an encyclopedia with old masters as her early won exposure. Nonetheless, she was impressed by a neighbor's drawings in sand and began drawing on her own time. And her parents, having noticed her interest and talent, decided to enroll her in art school. But Elle recalls that she felt inadequate and decided to abandon the pursuit. And it would take another 3 years for Elle to muster up the courage to begin her journey as a self-taught artist. At the age of 21, she experienced an artistic epiphany of sorts, having visited a museum for the very first time. Standing before Degas' Little Dancer with a Straw Skirt and having touched the skirt, which we won't report, she recalls a magical moment, one followed by another that she experienced at the museum's gift shop upon picking up a Camille Claudel exhibition catalog. The female artist's sculptures exuding at once suffering and love changed the course of Elle's life. 2 days later, she purchased her first pile of clay, and thus her love of sculpture was born. 3 years later, she found herself trading Switzerland for New York, hungry to expand her horizons. While there, she met the renowned and talented neo-expressionist artist Chuck Connolly, who would become her husband. She describes herself during this period as muse, studio assistant, driver, and cook, all the while trying to continue her work in sculpture and showing her work in a few group shows in Philly where the couple had settled. Setting aside her own work, despite very positive reviews, she dedicated herself to promoting her husband's career. In the 2008 documentary, The Art of Failure, Chuck Connolly, Not for Sale, she was described as the, quote, poor, abused wife. At this point, she found her way back to New York and had the good fortune of meeting landlord Adrian Longo from Washington Heights, who rented her an apartment and changed her life. This move marked another watershed moment in her life. Shedding her self-described rock and roll lifestyle, she sobered up, began painting murals in Longo's buildings, and resumed her artistic life. This included becoming involved with NoMAA's Open Studios and participating in Art Bridge, a program created by Rodney Durso. She won a Saatchi online competition in 2008 and a NoMAA grant in 2009. This successful streak was interrupted by a boyfriend's feelings of neglect. Once again, she found herself losing her momentum. But eventually, she founded and for 3 years ran a company that produced a line of high-end umbrellas with patterns of her own design. She learned a great deal. She especially learned that she was not meant to be a CEO. Soon after, she took on a 9-to-5 job where she unfortunately suffered a physical injury that left her unable to create. Fast forward to now. Elle's works have been featured in group and solo exhibitions in New York, Switzerland, and Philadelphia, and are housed in collections in Pennsylvania, New York, California, Switzerland, Canada, and Mexico. Most recently, she participated in NoMAA's virtual online exhibition, Healing and Community, curated by Patricia Miranda. We will hear tonight from Elle, a self-taught artist who describes herself as lacking in confidence and who abnegated to larger personalities around her. But she will also talk to us about her trajectory as one of evolution and maturation. Especially, she will talk about the impulse that she now has to share her creative process with the world and without reservation. These works draw on pre-Columbian, Byzantine, Renaissance, and Art Nouveau elements and are transformed into personal, curvilinear, abstract sculptures inspired by nature. Describing her sculptural process as a dance, she challenges the viewer to see her work through ever-changing perspectives. And she will be here tonight, and she is here tonight to tell us much more. Elle, welcome.
Thank you so much, Neria. You're always so wonderful at painting or artist life. Beautiful. You're so poetic. I am Laurence Elle, and I am so honored to be at NoMAA, and it's a big leap of faith, and it's coming out of my shelf, and I got the help of in this video, that's coming video, from Horst Diddenbaum and Eric Perez, who are both Washington Heights residents, and they created this beautiful little movie that I hope you are going to enjoy, and yeah, go through the process of it, and then there you go. It's like a dance of the senses. Get the clay into my hands and then just start digging, start moving, start discovering. I love to see the shadow and the light. You know, what's comes through. Sometimes I lead, most of the time the clay lead, you know. It's like this beautiful dance. And then I'm so in love with this clay. This clay is so yummy. It's telling me my story. Like, I discover things about myself. I'm discovering things about what's going on in my life. I mean, once the piece is finished, I don't know, it's often like, they're like self-portraits. I started sculpting for a long time, but I mean, for years and years. when I finally started again, things from my drawing came into life in the sculpting. Sometimes I'm looking at a sculpture and I'm like, oh, this is weird, but I drew kind of something in the same flow, in the same. What I like too is that every angle has its story. I would say I have so many tools because the moment where, I start digging into the sculpture, like the more I get involved with it, it's like sometimes I want to do something and then I can't reach it. So every tool, somehow it's like, suddenly it's like this savior tool. It's just coming in and I could do exactly what I want. And I would say that I use my finger for the first core of the piece, but then once the clay gets a little bit firm, and then I use the tool. I'm digging in the middle here, and if I'm not careful and there's too much weight here, and then I'm digging in the middle, then it's gonna collapse, which sometimes is okay. Like I've done some of my favorite work with this sculpture there. That's a bunch of mumble and jumble first. I was trying to do something very, very geometrical, but then the clay didn't want to be there. I had a balloon, but it didn't want to stay. So I gave up, and then I just took the pile of clay and I just shove it on top of each other. And then I'm looking at it, I'm like, that's it. What I like is the magic, this sculpture. I could be doing something this side and pushing it this side, and then I'll turn, and then I'm like, oh my God, I love what had happened here, but it's not. I don't feel like it's stuff my doing. That's what I like. Like when I was first trying to make art, I was making myself miserable because I was trying to do something that was perfect. It's called la boîte à soucis in French, which means the box of worries. So yeah. So now this is not fired. None of this is fired. Everything is hyper fragile. But yeah, so that's the little box. And then hopefully I'll make it to the kiln. And then you have to find where it goes. This is one of my favorite things to do. I started doing those things when I knew that I couldn't paint, when I knew that there's very limited things that I could do. I remember of something that I had explored years before, and it was to put oil pastel on top of some paint, and then to take my my old ink pen and then just start drawing. I go
with the artist name, with my Swiss French artist name, Laurence Elle Groux, but L is easier, is faster. I'm so glad and excited to do the NoMAA virtual open studio. I used to do it years and years ago while I was still making art. Before I tried to go and get my 9-to-5 life and then get sick of it. So I'm a self-taught artist. I dabbled in art when I was a kid. I didn't know you could really make it like as your life. It took me decades to know that this is really what I'm gonna do, and it took me to get sick.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Very intimate, very close up view of your process and a glimpse into your, as you call your magic, really, which is sort of something that you've mentioned several times. And before we turn to our questions and answers, I wanted to ask you a little bit about what you've alluded to throughout, which is this idea of a period of time where you were not able to create. And if you could tell us a little bit about that and how that has informed the last 9 months. I know you talk about the last 9 months as being a sort of a moment where you've created a body of work after having been physically unable to move. And you talk about the pain that you endured and then the miracle of creation. And so can you talk a little bit about that connection, that relationship, that evolution with us tonight? And I think Michelle might also have some stills as well. So if you could start with that, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yes, it's a pivotal moment in my life. Actually, I think I had given up. I don't know why, I don't know how, but the thing is I had given up. I was heading into the 9-to-5, trying to have a career there. I was a sales rep. I was carrying a 40-pound suitcase up and down the stairs in the subway. My boss didn't want to pay a cab fares. So, and I kept on going and pushing myself, and my body, I'm a middle-aged woman, I'm a little woman. My body just gave up, and I had pushed my body so hard that the inflammation in my neck, my cervical, the doctor said I have the cervical over 80 years old. And I was in denial for a while. My boyfriend was this wonderful person, finally have like this great boyfriend in my life now, just told me, stop, lie down on the couch, that's all you can do. And lying down on the couch and even watching TV being so painful, it hit me that I could not hold a book, I could not hold a pen, everything was so painful. So I had to rehabilitate my body, and honestly, like I wanted to almost like injure myself by saying like, how stupid were you to things that you could take for granted, that in 20 years you will be able to create, that you will just retire and create. And so the first thing that the moment I was able to even just like slide myself a little bit on my couch was to take, you know, paint a little, put some oil pastel, and then start scratching like those drawings. Yeah, those were some of the first little drawing. I made like some smaller one first, but just to be able to do that, like my soul and my yeah, it, it was relieving, and maybe it took 9 months for me to be able to even carry, like I would go to the store and I could not carry a gallon of milk, was too much. I remember looking at my basket and putting like 2 things in it. So imagining sculpting again wasn't thinkable. And one night when I was doing better, I'm telling my boyfriend, well, maybe I should try to go and take a art class. And he pushed me to go and do it. He's like, even if you could just touch the clay a little bit, it'll be like so much better. And so I did, and I joined the JCC, on 72nd, and they have this wonderful ceramic studio there. And I met all those wonderful women, and I had suddenly this community, and some were older women and could, like, there was this like 90 years old woman who could barely just push the clay, but she's doing it, and she's making those beautiful sculptures, and it was wonderful to see. And then little by little, I just lived again. It's like built my strengths back. So yeah, so the lesson was to not take for granted the ability to create, and each stroke is a miracle. It's a wonderful gift. So yeah, that's it.
That's wonderful. It's I think a couple of people have sort of talked about this idea of this kind of relationship that you have. This almost this love affair that you create, right, with your work, and this sort of need, this sort of to have it in your life. Dimitri, you also had a question. Are you here? Did you want to ask your question to Elle?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think I wrote it, but I'd be happy to ask it. It's basically about the connection between your, at least what I saw, your visual art, like painting and drawing, and on the one hand, and sculpture on the other. So the question, I guess, is what is the relationship between those two? Because one generally, I mostly paint, right? So those are supposed to be two-dimensional, whereas sculpture is of course three-dimensional. And even though it's possible to blur the lines there, but I'm just curious for you specifically how they relate to one another. And I guess a related question would be how they influence one another. So in other words, how does the process of sculpting sometimes, how does that influence your painting and vice versa?
I think it's like one feeds the other. So
Yes.
it's like the egg of the chicken, kind of, almost. Because, like I said in the video, that I was trying to be perfect. So I was trying to do those realistic sculptures. And I remember one day I got extremely mad at my ex-husband. I don't remember why. And then I took a tool to one of my sculpture and I started slashing it and swirling it and slashing it. And then somehow that reminded me of the doodles that I was doing. So, and then it became this realistic sculpture, became this abstract sculpture, but not just, it's like there was story in there. That is the same kind of stories that were in my drawings. And then I think over the years, my style evolved. And then I've been trying to bring my drawings into my sculptures, actually.
How
I
so?
think
I also realize as an artist, too, these are very tough questions. I realize, so I'm putting you on the spot, of course, because like I think a lot of the answers to my question are actually you realize when you are in the process. You know what I mean? So it's hard to kind of like recall and look back and try to grasp. You know, it's like it's trying to grasp like a slippery eel. So I get it that it's tough, but you know,
but it's like I think that this is one of the reasons why I say that it's magical because I try not to control it as much as I say, like it's a dance, like where most of the time the material leads, and then I try to take the dance a little, but not too much, because if I start trying to control things, then I feel like I'm ruining it. So I like the flow of the first core of this thing, and then from that first core of this thing, that go and beautify it, like make it flow, make it sing. Yeah, make it sing. Like give love, all the love that I could give, so I could give the love to somebody. But like this sculpture here, like this was a very fast sculpture coming from somebody who was throwing somebody was throwing a pot in a wheel, and it was a reject. It didn't work for them, and it was like a pile of things. So I saw it and I'm like, oh my God, I could do something. And that was like the first one where I took it and then I started like working on it. And then at some point it just says stop. Like this is a very off the cuff sculpture where there was no need to beautify it. It needed to stay like raw. And then the other side makes me think of like, you know, those Chinese little I have one here. For some reason, it makes me think of the little Chinese guys with, can you see?
I think you got to bring it closer to the camera.
You know, the fisher.
Bring it closer to the camera.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
You guys see it?
Yeah.
I don't know if you could see it, but it's in bonsais. Most bonsai, if you go to Chinatown, they have this little guy. And for some reason, it made me stop. When I saw that, I was like, oh, I recognize you. I'm stopping here. And there was this peacefulness and this serenity about it. So I don't know.
It's so interesting. This is sort of related. Elizabeth, you were talking a little bit about the clay and sort of the intentionality. Did you want to sort of, it seems like the right time to maybe talk about your comment.
Well, I love it. It's interesting that this last piece that you showed to me has a lot of the drawing, scratchy context that you seem to put in your drawing. And so I found that you see all of those marks there. To me, it's like many of the drawings that you seem to be showing. But also I'm a weaver. And I think that sometimes we go with intentionality and sometimes we don't. But there are many times when the material itself just seems to, and I'm not a particularly mystical person, but the material seems to say, nope, that's not what I'm doing. I'm going to do something else. And it, whether or not you are aware that it's speaking to you in the final, in the results, you start to see, whoa, that wasn't my idea, but this is what's happening. And that's partly what you were showing us earlier when you were working with the clay initially. So thank you.
Thank you.
There seems such a respect for the medium. You know, there's such a, you know, almost a, you know, it's a, yeah, like it's, you know, it's like almost you pay homage to it every time you handle it. And So that relationship is very interesting. And I think Liz, you sort of talked a little bit about that too. Do you want to ask your question? And then I think you were also asking about the drawings. You had a very particular question as well.
Yeah, I had essentially the same observation that Elizabeth had about that the creative process seems to really be very much a partnership between the artist and the medium. And I mean, I guess that's always the case with art, but it just seems even more so here. But I'm wondering, can you tell me a little more about this paper? Like, what is this? It's yeah. What is this paper? Do you make this paper? Do you buy this paper? What's the stuff that you're scraping off? What's underneath it?
It's just regular paper, and then it's just, then however I put the medium on, then it creates this. It becomes this paste. I mean, it's just
What's
paint
the medium?
and pastel. It's just paint and oil pastel.
Huh.
And it just like scratch it.
That's really cool.
I used to do those big circle where it was all oil pastels, and I would just like scratch and scratch and scratch. I used to call them the healing circle. Like very meditative to me.
That's interesting that it's also, that's a sculptural practice, right? Because in sculpture, you also take away. Right?
Yeah. It's like I mean, this is fascinating to me because it's drawing, but it's also, it's adding because it's drawing, but it's subtracting because it's scraping at the same time. So it's this really interesting metaphor of process and of medium. That's super cool.
Yeah, and I think sort of related to that, even the way you talk about your art and you talk about your life and you talk about these watershed moments, it's almost this kind of continual sort of, you know, unearthing of layers, right? Trying to get to something, you know, which I think in your own life, you know, you've had those moments as well, and it seems to be such a part of your process, right? That sort of through the art, there is the unleashing of all of these possibilities or of magic as you sort of describe it, right? Yeah.
I think it's probably like being self-taught and having to learn everything. So it's not like this straight lines. It's like this journey, even more so, because it's like having to learn everything and not having like teachers. And most of the time I was by myself in my house, you know, hiding. Like, so for me, like the quarantine and being at home making my art is not new. It's like, it was new for me to go out and go into an art class, you know, to be with other people. But so I think it's the self-taught, and then it's the that, like my mom would call it, like, you know, just let the little crazy Elle just be free and explore, you know, go on a journey, because life is a journey.
I think, Kathy, you had a question about the sculptures. Do you want to jump in here?
Sure. Yes. Well, Elle, your work is beautiful. Thank you so much for presenting it and sharing it with us. It's just gorgeous. You mentioned that you don't fire your sculptures, or do you ever fire them, or do you just not fire some of them, or?
No, I fired them since I went to the art classes, and now I glazed them. It's like this beautiful process of adding colors to it. This one was about to be, was not glazed yet when I took the photos. It is glazed, it's like behind me now.
Okay.
But like the last work that was on the table in from the movie, all of that was done during the quarantine, so it's not fired yet. I have yet to go and get myself a kiln. I mean, not a kiln myself, but find someone to fire those.
And you use regular glazes.
Well, these are were made at the JCC studio by Mark Merkel, who is like a great sculptor. He's like an amazing sculptor.
Yeah.
He does beautiful glaze. Yeah.
Your sculptures are so, there's so many grooves and ins and outs, and so there's no need then to go in and create spaces inside for the firing.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I know. That's what I love. I love to go and dig. I think it's my failed attempt at being an archaeologist.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think Irene has a question. Irene, are you here? Do we have Irene?
She left.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, good.
I'm sort of here now. Yes, I really missed that process first about the paint and the oil pastel. Is the sheet of paper entirely covered with one or the other first, and then what?
Yeah, it's paint and oil pastel.
But is the oil pastel, you allow paint, and what kind of paint?
Paint, like regular
Oil?
No, acrylic, like paint.
Acrylic. Okay, there's a different. Yeah. Okay, so
yeah, no, well, yeah, because it would take way. I do not have the patience for oil paint. It takes too long to.
Okay, so
yeah.
you cover it with the acrylic paint, and then you let it dry, and then you do something with oil pastels over that.
Yeah. Simple.
And then you scratch. So
Yeah.
it's 3 process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to visualize, because I haven't done this, of how you want
fire, and it feels nice. I don't know how to say
2
it.
layers of medium first, and then you do your
Yeah,
process.
but you can just take two different colors of oil pastels, and then just do one layer first, and then do the next one on top of it, and then just start scratching.
Okay, so it's only that you've done the whole color, the oil pastel, all in one color before you start your designs.
Yeah.
So you could do anything, any kind of what. Yeah, okay, I get it. It reminds me of, there used to be with my children this paper you would get. It was black.
Yeah.
And then they would do their designs, and then you would discover what the color was underneath.
Yes, same process.
And that's why I'm wondering, why do you need 2 different things before you scratch your design? I guess you need the underlying paint as the background.
Yeah, because they make those papers where it's white in the bottom, but I don't like the consistency of the paper when you scratch it.
Okay.
It doesn't flow. I like when things just like flow, because like the fluidity of your movement goes.
Yes.
So it's easier. There's no like that doesn't make me happy.
Yeah, that makes sense then. Okay, thank you.
Irene, I remember, I have such fond memories of that from elementary school, but I remember we used to take crayons, and they would ask you just to color like different blocks or different, just take crayon and color the entire white sheet of paper, and then we had to paint black over it. It was kind of a process, and then we would go back in, and they would reveal all the colors, and it was, I felt very nostalgic. I think a couple of us had that. Liz, I think you said too, and Donna too, that elementary school project. Certainly mine never looked like yours, but but the intention was there. Elle, I wanted to ask a question. You mentioned when we talked about your bio and things, you talked a little bit about some of your influences, some of the things that you thought about. You know, when I looked at your work for the first time, I thought a little bit about pre-Columbian art, sort of a lot of, I see a lot of that references there and an affinity there to some of that. You also talked about Art Nouveau and Byzantine art. Can you talk a little bit about your experiences? I mean, I love that idea of you standing in front of Degas at the age of 21 in a museum and having this moment. I mean, you know, those are, as an art historian, I love stories like that, you know, where you're just, your life changes, you know, when you see a work of art and people weeping in front of, you know, Velázquez or Rembrandt. Can you tell me a little bit, can you tell us a little bit about those influences and those relationships and dialogues that you've had with these works and these styles?
Yes. One thing that I always thought that it was a little bizarre in my life is that it's not that I would look at a style of work or something and say, I want to go and do that. It's like somehow later on in life, I realized that it was borrowing an essence from a little bit of all of those things. And to me, it's like a sense memory of images that you see and then you are like attracted to. I guess like pre-Columbian, because I love Aztecs, I love those blocks. I don't know how to say it. It's hard to put a, yeah, like those guys. Yeah. Like, I don't know, it's the shape, it's almost like feminine, you know, like there is a femininity to it. And I think, but to me, it's the curve that attracts me, and it's a whimsical, like something that's kind of whimsical about it, like something that gives a smile. I think that there's something in the works that brings you in, but it's art, so you know, like they say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? So, and I don't know, there's those pages in art history book where you they're like the one where you just go boom boom boom, I don't care, and then there is suddenly that like, oh my god. And that's what happened to me with the Camille Claudel. There was a pain in there that attracted me, and it was the pain, but that like that pain, suffering was, she was putting love into her work to attract like people to look at her work, and like that way of bringing love. Like I guess if anybody, Camille Claudel was yeah, look at this, like the movement, the poesy, she was this is the first picture I ever saw. Second, like this woman who's working on this big sculpture. Look at this. Okay, this little woman here, that's the image that I first saw. That's what got me to sculpture. And she was Rodin's student, muse, mistress, and she stepped away from Rodin, went on her own, but it was like it was like 1890 when she left, and she was a woman, and she was the sister of a diplomat, and she was a little bit too crazy for society at the time. She did a lot of Rodin's work, I believe, and story short, you can look into her life, but she ended up spending 30 years in an asylum. She spent World War I, World War II in an asylum when she could have gotten out after 3 years, but nobody wanted to take care of her. And so it's a tragic story. Her career was very, very, very short. But the work that she did is, I don't know, she's my muse. Yep. I get very, very passionate when I talk about her and very emotional.
Elle, you were 21, right? When that happened, that experience you talk about?
Yes.
You were 20. And so before that, you know, you didn't have access really to museums or collections or artists or any of that.
No, there was a museum des Beaux-Arts in my little town, Lausanne, but it was so antiquated. Like it's not even, nobody would have taken me there. Say, hey, let's go to the museum. I don't know, it wasn't like part of my family's education. But my neighbor, she was into outsider artists. So in her house with her husband, there was an Anais Nin. I don't know if anybody knows Anais Nin, but there were like 2 big drawings. And I remember like always, like I had no idea who she was. I discovered later on that those drawings were, you know, from this outsider artist, like, but those drawings I could still remember to this day, like loving them. So that's all, like, you know, the encyclopedia de Larousse, that's the dictionary with the images, you know, the famous people and the name, and yeah, and then that's it. Yeah.
I mean, it, you know, it certainly speaks to, I think, something we all, you know, just we get and we understand this sort of, you know, the transformational power of art, you know, of seeing something for the first time as, you know, this moment where you're just so transfixed by what you see or about what's being communicated to you, you know, and it's such an intimate relationship that you have, you know, when you see a work of art and you feel like it's speaking directly to you, you know, that's a really powerful, very personal, right, experience. Any other questions that anybody wants to have, or a comment anybody has you want to share or ask Elle before we move to our rapid fire? Anyone? I think, go ahead, yes.
Good question. Have you ever used sculpting tools to paint?
Sculpting tools to paint?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually my first abstract oil painting were made with palette knives.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you can call that as a sculpture tool, but yeah, kind of.
Yeah. It's a painting tool too, but yeah, it could be a sculpting tool too. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never done so other like great paintings, but those were cool actually. Yeah, those were good.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're gonna move on to our rapid fire questions, Elle.
Okay.
I know you've seen these before, so if you're ready, what we do here is basically I just ask some questions and you kind of off the cuff, you know, answer unrehearsed, whatever comes to mind, and we just have a good time. So here we go. This has been a question that I've asked myself this week, and this has really been on my mind lately. So I'd like to know from you, what are you most looking forward to doing post-quarantine?
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm gonna cry. Hugging my friends, of course. I think I would really like to jump on a plane and go and see my family. Yeah, but hug my friends, like, you know, yeah. And go to the JCC and sculpt with my lady, my wonderful woman. Yeah, yeah.
It's amazing hugs, how that really just, it's, I think we're all really in need of that, you know, that touch, that connection. I think we're all really longing for that. Yeah, I can identify with that. Okay, what do you consider your greatest achievement? We're digging deep today, Al.
I think I know it's gonna sound silly, but finally being in a place within myself that somehow I found the greatest love of my life. I finally found like somebody who pushed me to go and do my sculpture that before in my life I left other hindered me. But I had, you know, I had enough love for myself this time to say that nobody that doesn't embrace that, you know, that nobody could stop me now. Like, this is something that I need to do. It's to survive all of my soul. You know, like, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty big achievement.
Yeah, love, you know, love.
Yeah.
Love and friends, you know, like having long-term relationship with people, like loving relationship with people. I think that's like the greatest achievement.
Okay, so this is a little more lighthearted. You're gifted a lion, and you can't regift it, you can't sell it, you can't get rid of it, you're stuck with it. What are you going to do with it?
Oh my God, I make sure that I'll be nice with the cats and the birds. But yeah, no, there is a place for here, of course.
Of course. Okay, I love that. All right. It sounds so easy, right? Okay, what do you find funny?
Human beings, I think, like laughing at ourselves, because what else is there, you know? Like, yeah, I think human beings we're so funny. We're all the same. We're intrinsically like all the same, yet so different and so quirky.
It is also a fascinating moment when you get to a point in your life where you can laugh at yourself. It's very liberating, right? It's a good feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, what is on your nightstand?
On my nightstand, there is this book that I want to read again. It's called The Secret History of the World. It's one of those crazy thinking upside down book. Yeah. And sculptures, you know, I mean, it's a long nightstand. Yeah, sculptures.
Your own works are on your nightstand?
Well, it's I had to go and buy this long it's not a nightstand, it's a shelf, big long like mirrored shelf, so I could put all of the sculpture, because you know, you live in New York City in a small apartment. Where do you put all of this?
You have to make the most of every space.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is one of my my favorite questions. You have a dinner party. You can have 3 guests, dead or alive, real or fictional. Who's coming, and what are you serving?
Okay. It's gonna happen in the Renaissance.
Whatever you want.
Oh,
Whatever
yeah,
you want.
might as well, right?
Why not? Sure.
Fine. So who knows who may come by. But I know it's gonna sound strange, but I would love to have Julius Caesar.
Okay.
I know, but I think he's fascinating for some reason. And of course, I would love to have Camille Claudel. And I would love Frida Kahlo because she is a woman who had to deal with physical, talk about like physical disability and not being able to create for a while, and and what she did, and like yeah.
Yeah, she certainly had to deal with it all, physical, emotional,
Everything.
professional, all of it. Yeah, really. Okay, well then maybe this is connected. Which historical figure do you identify with? You've talked about Frida, you've talked about Camille.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. It depends. I would say that it depends the periods of my life. No. I don't know.
I think it's interesting. You know, you talked a lot about, I think the, the adversity that a lot of these women face, and especially I think in sculpture, it's for so long, it was the domain of men in the art world, right? Especially the 19th century. And there were so many women who, their work was sort of not taken, seriously, or not believed that it was by them. It was always sort of attributed to a male sculptor because it was sort of always seen as something that was not for women. So it's sort of interesting, I think, this sort of leitmotif in your life also that you kind of talk about, this idea of being, being able to sort of forge your path, right, and to find your way and to do your work, and to do it independently. So
actually, I would more identify myself, those bugs that have to roll that big bowl of dirt up a hill, and to not give up, but just keep on pushing. But that, I think somehow that's more, it's like, and then you're asking, that's the image that I have. It's like this, like, just like, don't give up, keep on going, just keep on going. Like, yeah, they are like things that stuff, but okay, I think that was
Sisyphus.
I was thinking Sisyphus, but of course Sisyphus keeps coming back down. So let's kind of just keep moving up. But let's keep. Yeah. So, there he is.
But the ball goes over you. The roll
keep rolling back.
You gotta climb back that hill.
And of course, Michelle, you picked one of my favorite artists, Titian. So thanks for that. You're always so on point. Okay. All right. What is the title of your biography, Elle?
I want to say Almost There, or resilience. I like resilience.
Yeah, I see that. That seems so. Maybe this is just to sort of wrap it up, because I think that there are very clear connections that you've made tonight. What is your motto or your words to live by?
It's my grandmother's motto. I keep on seeing her. My grandmother would always tell me that she would You know, sometimes in life, I'm in my kitchen table. And all I could do is like I get my hands like that, and I run my head like that, and I shake it, and I shake it, and then I lift my head up, and I'm like, okay, let's go, keep on going. And in French, it's like, okay, on y va. So this is on y va. Okay, on y va. So, yeah, but I guess, yeah.
Elle, thank you so much. This was truly fascinating and inspiring, and it's really I think a wonderful way to end this tonight. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for asking your questions and for your interesting insights and contributions. Thanks to the Manhattan Times for sponsoring tonight, and Michelle has put up these wonderful graphics that she has put together. As I said, they are the eyes and ears of Upper Manhattan, and we are grateful to them. We are grateful to the Department of Cultural Affairs, and we look forward to next week to see you all again here at 7:30. And before we say goodnight, I want to turn the mic over to Martin, who will close out our evening with some previews and some important announcements. Martin.
Thank you, Neria. And we ask everybody to please take a moment to answer the 3-question survey that Michelle is going to place on your screen in just a moment. We would appreciate very much your input on tonight's program. Also, it's very important that everyone submit their 2020 census. If you have not done so yet, please complete the form online at my2020census.gov. We invite everyone to please read the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance newsletter on our website, NoMAANYC.org. That's NOMAANYC.org for the latest information on artist opportunities, upcoming events, and more. And we invite you all to please join us at 7:30 p.m. next Thursday, July 30th, for West Harlem artist Rafaela Luna's Stay Home Open Studio, sponsored by the Martinez Gallery on 135th Street and Broadway. Following next Thursday's Open Studio, we will take a 2-week break, and NoMAA's Open Studios with a different artist each week will resume at 7:30 p.m. on Thursday, August 20th. Please mark your calendars and see artstroll.com for information. Everyone, thank you for joining us tonight, and have a great weekend.
Thank you, everybody. Good night to all. We'll see you again next week. Thanks for being here.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.